Let's get it going. It's been a while since I've done this. Hold on. We have to make sure an audience is in attendance. Hydration is important too. Yes, sir. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Is the stream on? The stream is in fact on, apparently. Would you like to show me the stream being on? Thank you. Live recording. How exhilarating. All right. Golly gee. I haven't read out loud in a bit. Certainly not on camera before. Oh gosh. We're just a bundle of nervousness. Hello. Welcome once again to Whispers in the Theater. I'm your host, the Whispering Gardener Shoe, here to continue our harrowing tale. Dark Orange, Revive, Chapter 21, Harbinger. Fire burned in the distance as another building came down. A teenage boy watched from his bedroom window, his eyes drifting down the street. He could see people running away from the nightmare, and sharply looked away as a red spear tore through their bodies. Another building fell, and he swore he heard the screams. He didn't want to witness any more until a rumble rolled past his house. Chancing another look, he saw a convoy of vehicles driving down the road where the people fell. The soldiers were here to stop this horrendous attack. But as another building crumbled, he wondered if they'd be fast enough. Would they stop the devastation from getting closer to his house? Would he be okay? Was watching all he could do? He saw a truck flip through the air, and as it crashed down, he went back to saying prayers. His parents His parents sent him to his room just in case the arbiter didn't hear them. They thought they'd be the final line between death and life, but he wasn't so sure. Why wasn't the arbiter answering their cries? Were this many people supposed to die before everyone else was safe? It was almost as if he was praying to deaf ears, and that put a new thought in his head. He was a devout worshipper of the Almighty One, but he heard strange whispers recently in school. One boy he knew to be the brother of a soldier said to another that there was a different way to pray. He said he tried it himself, and God actually answered back. Looking back outside, he wondered if it was safe to be uncertain. Thinking back on those whispered Thinking back on those whispered words, he thought the alternative was the better answer. I call thee God, dwelling on the edge of the court. I stand outside and wait for thee, asking that my words be heard. I know that I am not worthy of thy eye, but may I still have thy ear? Yes, my child, a voice spoke into his head. His heart swelled and almost brought him to tears. God, I really want to protect my mom and dad. Is there anything I can do? Yes, my child. Accept this small morsel of my power. A cerulean marble whirled together, splashing its light upon his face. Is this really wrong? Is it really all right? Yes, my child. He could feel God's warmth in his heart. The boy took it and shoved it in his mouth. For a moment he felt the wind around him, and then it was like it was rushing into his body. It took him another moment to realize he was floating off the floor, and the moment after that he realized he had 3 extra eyes. His arms were covered in crystal spikes, and his legs felt bestial and strong. He smiled a roll of sharp teeth and rushed out to the room. He smiled a roll of sharp teeth and rushed out of the room to share the prayer with his parents. He called out as he arrived downstairs, and they looked over with terror. He couldn't understand why. He had only called for Mom and Dad, but his father picked up a knife and pointed it his way. He called again, with his hand reaching out, and his father barked something he couldn't understand. He suddenly realized he couldn't understand a lot of things, not their terror, or their words, or how he thought these things could be his parents. Parents? Wait, what was that? He looked at them again and could only see floating beads of light. Didn't those belong to him? Why were they over there? He fired spikes, and as they hit the wall, he hurried over, plunging his hands into their flesh. He pulled the lights out and ate them too. He peered out the window and could see so many more. Breaking through the glass, he stared out into the night. Down the street, lights rushed toward him. They looked ever so much like a feast. Chapter 21, Part 2. In Sector 2, King stood outside the lab. Caleb stood behind him, writing his strange letters in the air. To his right was Michaela, looking on with confusion and intrigue. Having no involvement, he had nothing to say, but found the researcher having no involvement, he had nothing to say, but found the researcher fascinating. She saw what looked like non-stop. She saw what looked like nonsense calligraphy as numbers. He couldn't help staring. It was clear they changed for her, and he wondered how she did it.
All right, I gotta ask,
Michaela suddenly said.
what exactly are you doing?
A fascinating question, Michaela. And it's actually quite simple. King here is an interesting specimen, far different from you and leagues different from me. When light comes in contact with him, it sort of disappears. I'm using math to figure out how to make that all better.
And why are we doing it outside where somebody might fly by and accuse us of treason or murder?
That's even simpler. It's because of how Sector 2 is. It's flooded with the light of the cerulean luster. King tossed in.
I pretty much I pretty much figured that out, but I don't understand why we're outside instead of in.
Caliph replied. It's because the building acts as a focal point. Caliph replied. It's because the buildings act as focal points, making the light something other than raw data. It's all very efficient when you think about it. I have to say, your pillars had an interesting thing going on.
Are you going to explain? Are you going to explain?
As long as you keep asking. Sector 2 is so large because the light moves in three different ways. The military grounds is where it's most flooded, meant to help your soldiers better adjust. The cathedral is where it flows out the most, moving towards Sector 3, as you might imagine. Finally, there's the lab, where it moves the opposite way. All the light goes into the building, where it's repurposed into other things.
And because the building makes it something else, it's useless for what you're trying to accomplish.
There's that illuminating mind. Yes, it's useless. However, the grounds outside the lab are the best for light-based rituals. All it is moving, all of it is moving inward after all. By putting King here in the way, I have plenty of resources to figure this out.
You said that phrase before, illuminating mind. What exactly does that mean?
Ah, yes, of course. You wouldn't know about refraction yet, would you? She stared flatly in response. Refraction is how you acolytes utilize God's light, bend it into bending it into other things like your equipment in the lab, bestowing it upon another with a distinct purpose, adorning it as if it's something to wear, guiding it in, guiding it out and in, making it flow to your design, forging things from it, turning it from light to something physical, illuminating the mind so no distracting information leads your thoughts astray.
So when you say there's that illuminating mind, you're talking about how I use God's light to process data.
Bingo! King considered what he just heard. This sounds familiar to the luminance bands. In fact, forging is the same word. Arming would be bestowing, and amplifying would be guiding. It appears that despite the darkness, King here has an illuminating mind himself.
But that mission,
Would that mean that refraction armor the adorning? Ah, yes. Though I suppose Newdon didn't quite leave notes about it in their book. So much our dear Newdon didn't know.
so what are you doing then?
Michaela asked. You mean other than standing behind him menacingly? Cal smiled. I'm working on a thing. Perhaps the last bit of perhaps the last bit Newdon needed for the armor. I see, King said sharply, and Michaela frowned.
You two aren't going to explain this part, are you?
Why explain it? In a moment, you'll get to see. In a moment, you'll get the chance to see. Caliph answered.
What?
A light shined down from above. Michaela stiffened as her eyes moved up. Julius floated in the sky, looking down with venom in his eyes. He dropped like a bomb and she almost fell over as he rose from a crouch. His approach was mechanical, an impending saw threatening to tear a log apart. She moved just a bit behind King, but he looked up to meet the man's eyes. What are you doing here, intruder? What do you have to do with this accursed ritual? The dutiful type. It seemed he wanted answers more than he wanted to sate his rage. If you're talking about the dead soldiers ahead, I don't know anything about that. I do. Caliph raised his hand. It seemed he was done, but I'm not interested in telling you. Julius's eyes snapped to Michaela. And you're a part and you're a part of this?
Can I answer after the fight that's clearly about to happen?
No more to read.
Can I answer after the fight that's clearly about to happen?
He glared, and Caliph smiled. King, be careful with this one. Bridges' attendant is a setter. King, be careful with this one. Bridges' attendant is at Seraphim rank. What does that mean? A form blossomed from a flash above Julius's head. 6 burning wings gazed out with eyes dotting them, surrounding a head sculpted from ice. A light pulsed inside of it, a reflection of its power radiating off the attendant. The force of it felt somewhat familiar, like being unable to move in front of the Crimson Prophet again. Michaela was completely terrified, beads of sweat running down her face. Caliph, however, still smiled, as if he was hoping for this moment. By the grace of God's chosen, I bring ruin unto you. The form rained a beam upon Julius's body, slowly coming undone as he transformed. Wings grew out from his head, and his skin coated blue from his jawline down. The ice face glared out from his chest, and more wings shot out from his back. The fire that once ignited them rolled up his arms, and from them he made a partisan and aimed his blade at King. His wings beat as if to drive him forward. His wings beat as if to drive him forward, but he found he couldn't take a step. I don't think he expected that. Caliph laughed to himself. You know, King, I always wanted to see this in action. He leaned on King's shoulders. He leaned on King's shoulder. Luminance Forge, King replied. King replied, holding up a hand. A marble came together, and he said next, Luminance Arm. It burned blue, shining with luster to match Julius's flames. Luminance Amplify. The light boomed out, taking the familiar shape of a heart. Here comes my favorite part. Shining heart, beat. And it did, its paws ripping up his arm as he grabbed it. The dark armor glowed in the wake, matching the light as it flowed across his body. His hair shone. Bug-like wings burned out from his back. He looked at Caliph. He looked at them, and then at Caliph. I had nothing to do with that. Blame Nudon if you object. What is the meaning of this? Julius roared. Nudon calls it an omen when you're paralyzed by an antagonistic luminance. It's part of why they chose the name Refracted Harbinger. What you felt was an omen yourself. I herald the future of Cerulean's demise. King made his glaive, and his visor closed over his eyes. He wondered what it meant. He wondered what went through Julius's mind as he pecked. He wondered what went through Julius's mind as he. One more time. He wondered what went through Julius's mind as his paralysis. Wow. He wondered what went through Julius's mind as his paralysis faded. He tried to read it in those glowing eyes. Was that his duty changing its focus, or fear of what he heard? Whatever it was, Julius shot across the ground, stabbing the partisan out. King stopped it, swinging his glaive down, and Julius let it spin in his hand. He spun around next, swinging with it. King's block sent him flying. King's block sent him flying. Julius pursued with the same charge as the first, and buzzing wings carried the number out of his way. That didn't stop him from turning and throwing the spear. It crashed against the translucent pane. Mm-hmm. A brief aside, I could have written this fight scene much better, but hindsight is 2020. You learn as you go. Anyway, it crashed against a translucent pane. King dropped before it broke through, and Julius forged one anew. Consideration moved to his eyes. King could see it as clearly as the consideration in his mind. Yeah. I think, again, another aside. But I think back when I was writing this chapter, I was thinking to myself, I didn't quite have the rhythm down. I couldn't quite see it in its entirety. It hadn't fully played out in my mind. So I was kind of seeing it as I was writing. I would go back and change the chapter, frankly. I also just lost my position. Oh, no, it was at the end of the previous paragraph. But yes, I could do better with this chapter nowadays. One day I'll have an editor, and they can go back and clean up the old ones. His visor said it all. Julius favored adorning and forging, making his weapons just as dangerous as a chain to his body. Making matters worse, King was never much of a fighter. This would be his chance to improve New Dawn's design, but as he was now, he feared the next attack. That class has shown there are actually a few chapters I will go back and rewrite, frankly, but we mustn't do that. We must continue forward. That clash has shown that clash has shown him Caliph hadn't put them on the same level. That clash has shown him that Caliph hadn't put them on the same level. Maybe he could beat the blues from before, but this, maybe he could beat the blues from before, but this opponent was far too familiar with his power. Wait, that put a spark in King's mind. As Caliph said, there was much New Dawn didn't know, but it seemed he had a scholar in front of him. If your weapon could be adorned with light, what did that say about the way one forged the armor? What more, he wondered why it was. What more, he wondered why it was armor in the first place. Julius looked like he had a coat of paint on his skin, and not one drop of it made it hard for him to move. I like that scene, actually. Another aside. It is King's illuminating mind on display. He's thinking fast as he's having this fight. He's analyzing the shape of the person in front of him. And it's like, right now, I'm wearing very restrictive armor. It can protect me, but I can't really move in it. Meanwhile, Julius coated himself with his light. He's more or less got a new layer of skin that's just adding that same defensive benefit. he can move better. He can react better. It's like he's not limited while he's still being protected. And King is clicking on to that in this scene. I can throw in writer commentary as I'm reading. In fact, no, no, no. Yes, actually. Never mind. Anyways, feeling the luminance in the chess piece, King willed his armor to transform. He did away with the plates of glass, envisioning something more organic. He did away with the plates of glass, envisioning something more organic as a liquid wrapped around him. The glowing parts concealed The glowing parts congealed around his arms, chest, and legs, while his darkened abdomen shined with lines of circuitry. Refraction armor no longer applied. King wore a refraction suit and could feel the next step in New Dawn's design. It seemed Julius could as well, for he found the answer to whatever he considered. That was a kind of double layered exchange there that I also could write better. There are like three things happening in that scene. There's a pause in the fight. King has noticed that Julius is thinking, and he's taking his time to think himself. He's analyzing his opponent and seeing how he could better form his armor. So he goes from an armor to a suit. And when he's done doing that, Julius is also done with his consideration. There's some parallel thought going on there, and I wonder how clear it is to readers without me explaining it back. This is heretical, he glowered. Nope, this is heretical, he glowered. One more time. This is heretical, he glowered. The power of God should be wielded through prayer and diligence, but you are no different than those soldiers working with a deceiver. This is why the enclave could never be allowed to persist. God is nothing to you but a thing to exploit. King shook his head. God is a thing for us to kill, be it yours or any other. He leveled his glaive, more confident now. Julius sneered. Julius sneered, leveling his spear. Another side. Chapter 21 is not the chapter you jump into with Dark Orange Revive. At chapter 21, we are referencing a lot of stuff that has happened in the previous chapter, so if you are not caught up, you are lost. I digress. With a buzz of its wings, King started the attack. He came at Julius like the man had done before. He came at Julius like the man had done before, stabbing out like a soaring arrow. Rather than block, Julius stepped to the side. The partisan came for the back of King's head, and the glaive turned inward as he ducked back. The weapons clacked loudly as Julius drove the stab away. He twirled it over King and kicked, going for his exposed chest. A twirl of the glaive made. Yeah, this fight could have been choreographed better. And no, maybe it's easier for people to follow than for me as I'm both reading it at the same time. But I'm also a visual reader, so I'm trying to no focus. The weapons clacked loudly as Julius drove the stab away. He twirled it over King's head and kicked, going for his exposed chest. A twist of the glade made his point go wide. A twirl of the glade made his point go wide, slipping him forward as King stepped in. With weapons swinging on his tail, he slashing the man's stomach. Light poured out but sealed just as fast, making Julius take to the sky. Nowadays, I would have paused there. Light poured out but sealed just as fast. Pause, period. Julius took to the sky. So two things happened. He heals, and after he heals, he takes flight to get away and kind of reassess what he's been dealing with or what he's currently dealing with. Also, oh, the on button is on this side of this doodad. I did not know that. I thought it was the other side. All right, focus, focus, focus. Uh, right. Light poured out, but sealed just as fast, making Julius take to the sky. King followed, and the attendant's wings beat, spilling a spear rain. King followed. Yeah, okay, it's still in motion here, and I kind of broke that up. In fact, my pause made me kind of ruin the cinematics of that cinematography, choreography, focusing again. King followed, and the attendant's wings beat, spilling a rain, spilling. King followed, and the attendant's wings beat, spilling a spear rain. That also would be broken into two sentences or two paragraphs. King followed, period, paragraph, the attendant. But instead of the attendant, I'd probably say Julius beat his wing, then sent a spear rain. Julius beat his wing, then sent a spear rain. Something along those lines. Julius beat his wings and rained down. Something along those lines. Julius beat his wings and rained down spears. That's what I would do. Hindsight. That's what I would do. Hindsight. And I gotta stop interrupting the pacing of this with my commentary. King followed, and the attendant's wings beat, spilling a spear rain. Spilling a spear rain. The number met the first, but swerved away from the second, finding that there were far too many to block. Meanwhile, the attendant brought his hands together. A warning sign flashed across King's visor, but he was more confused than it could. O God, dwelling upon the throne in the court, guide my spear to punish the sinful. Julius raised his hand, and a glowing spear emerged. He launched it at King, already moving, only to find it homing. I actually wrote that type of scene better in the more recent chapter in Dark Orange Reborn, chapter 20. The idea of a homing attack and finding out that as you're dodging, it's already coming after you. I have grown as a writer. Anyways, he laughed. He launched it at King, already moving, only to find it homing. The spear hit, and King held it back with his pole. That did little more than make it a ram, however, smashing him through the ground, tearing asphalt and dirt. That one broke, and another came as Julius swung down. King quivered, but tried to meet it, catching it with his blades. But this too threw him. But this too, one more time. But this too threw his body, spinning him around as it tossed him in the air. Another spear came and ran. Another spear came and ran through him. It pinned him to the ground. Burning so cold he felt his nerves freeze and break. Yeah, a bit clunky in this entire chapter. Focus. It pinned him to the ground. Burning so cold he felt his nerves freeze and break. He grabbed hold as if to push it one more time. He grabbed hold as if to pull it free and knew it would never budge. His eyes lingered on Julius instead. The man still hovered above, as if he wasn't sure the fight was over. King could feel parts of himself dying, but his foe watched as if another trick was stored away. Meanwhile, he couldn't understand what had changed. He had only landed one attack, but the man fled as if he almost lost his life. That prayer felt like amplifying illuminance, a last-ditch effort made against an overwhelming foe. What had Julius felt that King had not? What was written in that wound that so easily healed? It would have disemboweled a man in a normal fight, but here it bled light. Was the severity still the same magnitude? King considered what he learned so far and what Ace had shown before. These were battles of light. Assassin, Assassin could win because his Umbra let him tear it. Ace could win by overwhelming the light of another. What did it mean to make light bleed? To break it, to make it spill, to force the luminance out of a person's body. Ah, there it was. That was the mistake King had made before. Refracted Harbinger came after the armor. Castle Cerulean attacked New Dawn to get their hands on the halos. King had pushed forward the design at the moment he made contact with Caliph. As a dark disciple, he couldn't tell, but Julius's caution had given it away. The band granted you control of your luminance, while the halo offered control of another. His focus had been on the band too much. Luminance, break. He luminance, break. He wheezed, and the spear in him shattered. Brief aside. This is also a good moment that I'm kind of wondering, like, is it too cluttered in? Well, my kind of clunky writing back here, where it's like, again, King is solving mysteries. One of the things he's doing as a character in the story is solving the mystery of the magic system and how it all works, and what New Dawn was doing to sort of make people capable of fighting gods. In this moment, he's looking at Julius, who's being cautious, even though he's an overwhelming opponent. And it's like, why are you being cautious? I only got one hit on you, and you only and you healed immediately. It wasn't lasting damage. It wasn't a fatal blow. Why are you being cautious if you're safe, if you can win this? And again, he's thinking fast. So it's like, oh, I see now. It's because when I did wound you, light bled out. Light is your spirit, is your energy, is the way you fight, is also your connection to the gods. So it's like, this is why it's earlier when Julius said that he's heretical. It's like you're doing something who isn't just like damning or dangerous, is blasphemous. Where was I at? Luminous break. That's where I was at. So we get to luminous break and like, oh, I get why it's blasphemous. It's its entire system about controlling luminance, and with this, because of my advancements in it, I can break your spear. I can break whatever forms your luminous takes on. And we're going to get to the kind of conclusory point of that as we get to the end of this chapter. So, sort of spoilers, but also bear with me here. Luminance break. He wheezed, and the spear in him shattered. He wheezed, and a spear in him shattered. Julius launched another, and King broke it with a swing. The wound in his chest was already healing. He could see why this was New Dawn's first plan. When it was complete, he would be able to alter any light with a touch. With a buzz, he shot at Julius, breaking the raining spears as the man tried to get away. A different word came to mind as the distance closed. It would be a shame to break a luminance that had been cultivated this far. As its glaive swung down, He called it out. In that point, I would use an M dash because there's two thoughts happening here. He thinks of a new thought, a new way to interact with the luminance, a new command for it. And then it's like he's all thinking about how, well, if I break Julius's luminance, then all of that data in it would be lost. So what if I was able to do a different thing? And so as he's cutting down, as he's delivering his blow, he's deciding what the new thing he's about to do is. So luminance that have been cultivated this far. It would be a shame to break a luminance that had been cultivated this far. As his glaive swung down, he called out, "Luminance, reeve." He tore through, killing the light from the man's body. Julius turned gray as he was knocked away. With Julius turned gray as he was knocked away. With light swirling in his blade, King returned to the ground. That went places I didn't expect. Caleb clapped. King turned the glaive and stabbed. King turned to one more time. King turned to him and stabbed the glaive into his chest. Luminance transplant. His body brightened like a flare. When it dimmed, he patted his chest. Interesting. Is that the name of the game from now on? Do, do I even need to act? No, that's Michaela. Do I even need to ask a question at this point? Michaela crossed her arms. Okay, so she's more rebellious here in this scene. Do I even need to ask a question at this point? Michaela crossed her arms. I transferred the angel's luminance into Caliph. If I can keep doing that, he won't need a vessel anymore. If I can keep doing that, he won't need a vessel anymore. Which means that eventually I'll be able to help him improve the armor in new ways. Is Refracted Harbinger the name you're going for? I have to admit, I have to admit, I'd be a little confused. I could read that line better. I have to admit, I'd be a little confused. No, while it doesn't fit New Dawn's style, I have a better name for what the band and suits make people. Luminance hackers. I see. With the power of a harbinger like me, there's no limit to the luminance you will hack. Does this mean that we, are done in the castle? Michaela asked. King shook his head. Not yet. There's something I think you need. There's something I think you'll need to do. Besides that, we still have to wait for Ace and Fang. Chapter 21 ends. And so too ends another episode of Whispers in the Theater. I would be delighted if you were to join me once again. And that was chapter bloody 21 of Dark Horns Revive, which was the last chapter of Dark Horns Revive that I recorded before Whispers in the Theater went on hiatus. I decided to start with that one. Like, I was going to start editing and posting the chapters again because, well, it was the last one I did. I also have to go back and kind of reread through Dark Orange Revive as a pantser. I did not take the notes I necessarily needed. But what I do like rereading that chapter is just how the mystery is currently unfolding. We're finding out more about how luminance works and how the characters will become strong enough to fight against the big bad in-game threat. King's job in the story has been to uncover that so far, and this is a pivotal part. This is a pivotal chapter for his character arc. I believe the next chapter is a chapter that focuses